It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, June 6th. Your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is having a big draft prep day today, Russ.
Yeah, this will be fun. I enjoy that.
We're going to get into some news from the Stanley Cup Final and the prospects that were in Vegas. Plus, we're going to have Fargo Force Day with two players from that team in the USHL that we will be profiling for later round draft picks, all on today's show.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there. Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on Twitter at Sportsology, once again coming to us from Las Vegas. Subscribe or follow us for free over on YouTube. We're also on the SiriusXM app, but anywhere you listen to your podcast, subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. How you doing out there in Vegas, Russ? Is it still scorching hot as per usual?
It is. It's around 99,
Oh my God. Well, one of the things that they do at the Stanley Cup Final is have some of the draft eligible prospects show up, get a feel for the big media circus around the NHL. And it's like one of the big events before the NHL draft. So you were there. Tell us who you talked to, what you heard, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, so first off, spoke to Lucas Carlson. I think the biggest thing I got out of him was he basically told me, I asked him how he feels confident getting to the net. And he said, I'm big. So with my size and my skating, if he just gets asked something close to that and gives that answer, he'll be going third. That's all you need to know.
Yeah. So we'll look forward to seeing him on the ice with Johnny Gaudreau in Columbus.
That's what I would think.
Okay.
Good chance.
Yeah. So I assume Connor Bedard was there. I think it's really interesting when you have the presumptive first overall pick and there's no argument as to who's going to go first and then after the lottery. So we basically know where he's going and how he chooses to phrase things about knowing that he's going to Chicago, but he can't really put it in those words. Like, how was he about handling that?
He was pretty good. You could tell he's still kind of getting used to it. And he even admitted he's still getting used to it. So we didn't pepper him too bad. He is the interesting thing is he's really good friends with Cristal, Benson, and Wood. Guys that he's played with. Some of them in the WHL, some of them on the Team Canada. So that was interesting. You could tell that there's a real camaraderie there. That was a big thing I took away from that.
So did he have anything to say in particular about some of the players that could be available for the Flyers? Could we get any hints from what Connor Bedard thinks of his teammates?
He didn't say anything like that. He didn't get into a lot of specifics, to be honest. This was for Bedard, it was really scratching the surface.
Yeah. Yeah. Who else was around?
So Adam Fantilli. And it was interesting. Besides saying he didn't like the heat, which I tweeted about that.
Nobody does.
I know, but he's got to play in Anaheim, so he might not like it for a long time. I did talk to him about his brother as far as playing on the team and rooming with him. And the big thing he said about rooming with him was, how we have to remember back very far. But when you remember back a long time ago when you had a college roommate, there is that awkwardness and everything at the beginning. You're getting to know them. You piss them off. They piss you off. And eventually you figure out, what works. And he didn't have to go through any of that because it's his brother. And that was a really good way for him to sort of ease into college life and eventually the team.
Yeah, that is really interesting. And, we've talked about a couple of prospects with older brothers who have played and they're going to be teammates and how that'll make things easier for them. And, I think that may give some of these guys that we've talked about a leg up.
Yeah, I think so. I think it helps you with maturity. It helps you not make the kind of mistakes that you sometimes would make in college. And the fact that he's like a big man on campus kind of made it easier for him.
Yeah, I would assume so. Anybody else around?
Yeah, so there was Will Smith, and he was the last one. And it was interesting because I did ask him about that line playing together at Boston College, and he laughed, and he said, "I got asked this a lot," and he said, "I'll know when I get there, but you could tell he would like to keep it together." So I think they're going to do everything they can to keep it together. Now, that if that happens, then Cutter Gauthier, something will happen with him too, whether that's their second line and he's on the first line, or he's on the second line and they're the first line. But it'll be an interesting dynamic. But you could tell it's something that he wants.
Right. And it's interesting to me because if that line does in fact stay together, first off, it's very possible that one of them will be a Philadelphia Flyers prospect, which is interesting in and of itself to have a Flyers prospect on a top line like that is so known, but also for a quote unquote freshman class like line to come in and assert dominance like that in a college team. And will the coach break them up just to, I think breaking them up would improve their play to some degree, because learning to play with different people, there's something to that.
I think it would improve two of them. I don't know if it would improve Perot. That's the one I would worry about.
Yeah, I agree with you there. But I also think that we know, like in college, in the program, lines don't stay together consistently for entire seasons. So I would suspect that either they're going to start them together and see how long they can.
I think that's what's going to happen.
Go. Yeah. Or they're just going to break them up from jump and then put them back together if they think that will help. Those are your two options.
Right. I think they're going to have them together. Of course, he doesn't know, and he gave the right answer. Yeah. But I think they're going to keep them together. And this line's been together for 2 years already. So that is an advantage. Now, whether they can dominate college and as freshmen, I don't know. But the fact is, I don't think we've ever seen a line come into college fully intact and have that be like the third year together with all that experience, of playing with each other. That would really help them. If you think about it, if I'm the coach, that helps them ease into the program very easy.
Yeah. And, I think that for me, just as far as looking at who's available and, and assuming that Will Smith won't be available.
He's not going to be there.
Right. For the Flyers, to me, that kind of makes the option of Leonard more appealing, knowing that he'll be playing with these elite players, right? And also have Cutter Gauthier there, and that factor, I think, could be something that would be to the Flyers' advantage. Now,
it doesn't suck.
It does. That is true. That is definitely true. We are going to be talking about them later this week and kind of discussing pros and cons of Leonard versus Oliver Moore and what that can mean. So stay tuned for that on the Thursday show. But yeah, just getting these extra nuggets of information from these kids while they're in Vegas for the Stanley Cup Final, I think it's a really fun thing.
It is a fun thing. It kind of helps. It lets them ease into the process too. It's helpful for them.
Yeah. Are they getting like formal media training while they're there?
No, but this is kind of like, this is like getting it. I mean, they've all had interviews, Bedard certainly the most. But this is, a way to help that. And they also get to see the players. They get to see the players' cars. They get to see like Lamborghinis and stuff in the parking lot. Some of them have maybe never been to a Stanley Cup Final. I'm sure Carlson has not. Will Smith has been to a bunch. Stanley Cup and other regular. Well, just Stanley Cup in St. Louis and then other regular ones. So he has a background in it. I don't remember anybody asking Fantilli, but I'm sure he probably has seen some as well. So, it's nice for that too, because this is a night where they can sort of dream that, hey, I could get there.
Yeah. It's also interesting because for them to be in Las Vegas and they're all 18-year-olds, it's like a whole different.
Oh yeah.
When you're your age and you're under scrutiny, like in Vegas, that's got to be a challenge too.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a challenge, but it's a tough life, Rach,
Yeah. Being a potential NHL star, I guess.
Yeah, it's hard.
A rough life.
It's hard.
But very excited to hear more from them moving forward. Obviously, one of them could be a Philadelphia Flyer in the future. So always good to learn as much about them as possible. We are continuing to learn more about as many prospects as possible. And that includes players that could be available in the lower rounds because you never know when you're going to hit on somebody. We decided to make a theme day about a couple of guys from the Fargo Force of the USHL. And we're going to start with Jake Fisher coming up next.
For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know what part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, exclusions apply.
All right. Once again, we are continuing our coverage leading up to the NHL draft. If you have any questions about potential draft picks, you can tweet us at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment over on YouTube. We're going to have our mailbag on tomorrow's show, so send them in if you want your questions answered. Talking about Jake Fisher of the aforementioned Fargo Force in the USHL. He's somebody who is a really interesting option in potentially the third round. And he just recently joined the Fargo Force after ending his high school career in Minnesota, where he was one of the top players in the state. He was a finalist for the Minnesota Hockey Man of the Year, I guess. I don't know. They have some top Minnesota High School Player Award of the Year, but he was a finalist.
They have the Mr. Hockey Award.
Yeah, Mr. Hockey. That's what it is. I remembered it was some sort of pageant-like thing. But yeah, so after playing with the Force, he is going to be heading to Denver University. So that's a top D1 program. Yep. He was actually originally going to go to Northern Michigan, but switched. And this is a much higher caliber program. And, you know, you look at the improvement that he has had over the last year, like even in his high school program, he had a tremendous leap forward, so much so that he did, you know, transfer over to the USHL to complete the season. But why did you want to talk about him specifically?
Because he's a guy that he plays center. He's a 200-foot guy. He wins faceoffs. He's big. He has a really good shot. He shoots from a lot of angles. So he's a guy that, you know, if you could get in the third round, fourth round, I mean, this could be a really valuable guy. This potentially could be a guy who could be a second liner for you, getting in those rounds. Now, maybe he turns into a third liner, but this guy looks like he might have second line potential. I think there's a really high ceiling with him, and I think there's a lot of untapped potential. He's lucky because on Fargo he gets to work with Matt Cullen on faceoffs. So if you remember him from the NHL, he was tremendous on faceoffs. He's a minority owner for them now, so he's there all the time. And so, you know, that's a leg up. He knows how to use deception on his shot. He also knows how to draw guys to him. He gets very technical. You know, he'll tell you, listen, if the F3 guy's here, I know there's going to be an opening there. I'm going to pass it to the guy there. Like I never heard high school players talk about the F3 in interviews when I first started in this business. And, you know, this is what they've, you know, basically graduated to. This is right. So, you know, I mean, so this is how much smarter they are now than when they just first used to come out of high school. So big time one-timer, but he only uses that when it's on the power play and he's going to wind up, but he has a snapshot. He's one of these guys that likes to shoot low, which I like because I think that's hard to stop on the other end. And yeah, he's a shooter and he can play make a little bit, but he looks at himself more as a shooter.
Yeah, it's interesting because I read up on him, like an article that was written while he was still in high school.
Okay.
And one of the comments that the coach made about him was that he is really always like keyed into where he needs to improve and is really good at goal setting for himself in terms of, okay, this school year we're going to work on this for me. And he accomplishes it. And that's what the coach does, is that every goal that he sets for himself, he accomplishes.
Yeah, and that's important. It is. I did an article on him on EP Ringside that people could check out. And, he, like I said, I interviewed him and I would swear he was already like a second or third year college student, just the way he was rattling things off and understood where he should be on the ice. And, that he has a good hockey IQ. Some funny stuff, like he's one of those guys that will just go out at night and start shooting on the tarp in the garage. And, his parents will sometimes yell at him, like if it's after 10 o'clock, to knock it off. So you forget that he's still like a high school kid, but he joined Fargo and they went on a little Clark Cup run, and he wasn't the biggest contributor for that, but look at the experience he gets from that.
Right. I think, when you see a kid finish up high school and then continue to play, that there's interest in him. For sure. He is kind of ranked in the third-ish round in a few places. So people do know who he is. He's not kind of coming out of nowhere.
No, he's not coming out of nowhere.
He's 6'2", which is, good size.
Yeah.
Especially, we do this debate about size or not size, in terms of who you want to pick. But I think, when you're looking at lower round picks, like third, fourth round picks, I think it does increase your odds of getting a diamond in the rough or getting somebody to hit when they are slightly bigger, because they already have the physical side of things. They don't need to overcome that in order to, or have extremely high skills at other things in order to compensate for the size difference.
I mean, I partially agree with that. Sometimes, though, the reason the smaller guys end up in the later rounds is because teams just don't believe in them because of their size, and the talent's better than where they are, right? So it's like that's the only part that my brain goes to. But you're mostly right. He's an interesting guy. Really do like him, and he's also one that long time ago, Logan Couture. When Logan Couture, I think he played for the 67s, told me pre-draft that he wanted to keep his teeth. That was important to him and his mother, and wore the mouth guard. And I remember I saw a night where Logan Couture got 2 teeth knocked out, like maybe 5 years into his career. And I felt bad. Like I was like, oh, I know that was like a goal of his. And Fisher has the same goal. He wants to hold on to his teeth. And I'm like, dude, it's hard. And I told him the story about Couture.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's funny. I think about that, and then I think about the way JVR like chews on his mouth guard the whole time.
Yeah.
So like that is not a role model for Jake then.
Not at all.
So looking at, what you think he can and should be working on in college when he goes to DU, again, a really good program. Obviously, we know Bobby Brink was there recently, and it was a really successful development path for Bobby Brink at Denver University. So what do you think that program can do for him?
I think what it can do is, for one thing, when you train in that environment and then you're not playing in that environment, meaning, above sea level, it does give you an edge. Do. That's why, a lot of times the national teams train up there because there's an edge to be gained there. So I think that will help him. I think he can gain some foot speed there because they never have slow players. Like they always have really fleet of foot players. So that's kind of an elite program for that. I think he also could be a little more physical. He's not a guy that's ever going to lay the big hit, but he says he will do some. And I think in college, it's a tough game. And if you want to find that room on the ice or get the puck, he's going to have to do it. Even more than he had to before. So I think those are things that really could be a help help to him.
Yeah, I could definitely speak to that altitude thing. When I lived in Utah and I played in my league that was at, I want to say 4,200 feet altitude, but I played in a league in Park City, which was at 7,200 feet. And I can tell you it was a big difference.
Oh, I bet.
I would get gassed so much quicker, but it was good for me to play it. I tried to play up there a couple days a week just to get that oxygen flow.
Yeah, it increases your lung capacity. Like it just does.
It really does. And then when we would go play tournaments at sea level, it was like the greatest day of my life.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I can imagine.
Definitely can speak to that. All right. So we're still with the Fargo Force here. And there's another player, Werner Miettinen, who is a teammate of Jake's, albeit briefly. And we are going to talk about him coming up next. All right, so continuing our Fargo Force day on the show, Werner Miettinen is a forward who is from Finland and has made his way to North America and has played with the Fargo Force this year. Also a member of the Finland World Juniors team. But obviously not one of the bigger names on that team, but made the team nonetheless, which is a huge deal. The thing about Werner is that he's an overager.
Mm-hmm.
He's 20 years old. He was originally eligible for the 2021 draft. His older brother was drafted by Toronto in the 6th round in 2020. According to what I read, people think his brother was a better player, but it seems like Werner has kind of closed the gap a little bit since
I think he's closed it a lot.
Yeah, and so he's going to continue to stay in North America and is going to play at St. Cloud State next year, which is, again, is a real solid D1 program.
Yeah, that's a good program. They for his play, it's really a good fit because I feel like he could be one of these really good defensive forwards that has some offense in his game. I've watched him and I feel like that's a strength of his, and that St. Cloud's going to push that. He's got decent foot speed already. I think he can improve on that. But he's also like a leader. Like he helped Fisher get used to the team. Fisher said he was a big help to him, kind of showing him the ropes and everything else. He still plays power play. You saw he had 34 points. That's nothing to sneeze at. 17 goals. That's pretty good. And he's a 200-foot guy. So quick shot. Can play the power play if you want him to. Definitely can defend. So this is the kind of guy, even if you're taking him in the 6th round, even if you're playing poker and he's still out there, it's worth it because this guy, I think, is a guy that is getting better every year, like you pointed out, and I think he's driven to make it. And I just think there's a good shot that he does. So I don't mind putting a late round pick on him because if I get a defensive center out of it, that's good. There, every team needs one.
Yeah, it is interesting, again, because you wonder why he didn't get drafted in 2021, why it's taken until now for, maybe somebody to take a second look, especially because he was ranked in the range to get drafted in 2021. So what do you think was the disconnect there?
Probably getting used to the area. That was probably his first year in North America. It's hard when you come from a place like Finland. All of a sudden you're coming into the USHL, you're in another country, you're traveling, you're taking the bus a lot, obviously. And so it's not the easiest, way to kind of like settle into a new place. So I think that probably is the reason. And I think now he's really used to it. So I think there's a, big difference. You take the overager, you could throw him in the AHL if you want to, or you throw him in juniors for a year and then you wait and you throw him in the AHL after. That's good. I mean, you saw what happened with Ronnie Attard. I don't recommend a lot of overagers, but I recommend him.
Yeah, I think, given that he is going into NCAA hockey next year, I think, you give
right. So he'll play the year at St. Cloud. That was my point.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all good. But he I think will benefit from that in terms of being able to, or at least if you draft him as a kind of a risk in a 6th round kind of pick, you'll be able to see what he does against NCAA competition, and you'll know probably within that year whether or not you'll be able to develop him any further. And if he decides he wants to leave because he'll already be 21 at that point, you could throw him in on the Phantoms at the tail end of the season, or he could go back and play another year at St. Cloud State. So it seems like there would be a lot of options and a lot of fail safes here. So it would be a really good risk to take.
It would. And there's a lot of Finns in college hockey. There are. And it works out. And so I feel like it translates because you do have to play defense in college hockey. You do have to have a little edge to your game. You do have to, play with some stick work, and that's like basic Finnish hockey, really.
Yeah, and I think the fact that again he was on that World Juniors team.
Yeah,
he did play on the Finland U18s back in 2021, so he has plenty of this international experience against the top players from his draft class, which goes back to like Jack Hughes.
right.
Kind of year, right? So he has played against, the last 2-3 years of top junior level players in the world. And I think you really would be able to get a good sense of who he is. And he understands what it's like to play against that kind of competition.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that's really important. And the fact that he's 20 and going into college, you don't have to kind of wait to see if he gets stronger or whatever. He's got those things going for him already. So that's why you're right. You can make a quick eval when he's there, and I think it's a smart thing, and I think this guy is doing the right thing for his career. Definitely not a slam dunk NHLer, but I think there's potential.
Yeah, and I think it's important to talk about guys like this, because especially when you're looking at overagers, like you said, with Ronnie Attard and the Flyers, there's some really good opportunities there, and with that shorter development path. Like I said, you're going to know what you're getting sooner, and you're going to get the benefit of that player sooner as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think so there's just a tremendous upside for taking this kind of chance.
Yeah, there's a lot of upside. You do the dice roll. You have a little better idea now what he is compared to back in 2021 if you'd have taken him. So these are all positives, and you don't have to sign him right away because he's going to be a college player. So all positives.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think, with Jake and with Werner and just all the USHL guys that we've been talking about in general, to me, it feels like the USHL is gaining prominence. Every year you have more and more guys that are coming out of that league, and it's becoming a higher quality league by the year. And it feels like we'll just see more and more guys coming out of there be successful in the NHL.
We will. Like, there used to be a list, hey, there was 55 guys drafted out of the USHL, and now it's probably like 105. It's like,
right.
Yeah, it's an elite league. It's becoming a top tier junior league. Like, it's great.
Yeah, I like it because I like that the Canadian leagues are getting competition. The fact that there is a place now. I know there are some like WHL teams, and there's a few OHL teams, that play in the US, but they're really Canadian based, and they have a Canadian culture to them. And to have a US junior league, taking steps forward to really compete for top players moving forward, I think will change the dynamic of player development moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely better than the Q, and I think they're starting to get the other ones a run for the money.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially, like with Jake, kids coming out of high school and wanting somewhere to go directly, much easier for them to go to the USHL.
Oh yeah, especially because like he could still stay in high school. He could travel with them on the weekends. That's a good way to kind of break into the league. Then all of a sudden, when they're playing for him, they can go there next year because they don't have to, no team can draft them because they played a certain amount of games. We've talked about that. All positives for the guy, and it's good because then you kind of know in advance. You get to meet your billet family like a year ahead and know that they're coming next year. That's all. It's good things to work out for a young guy.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, that will do it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow with so much more, plus your mailbag questions. So get them in. Again, you can tweet us at Locked On Flyers, email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com, or comment over on YouTube. I am Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great day, everyone.